Hello.
Hello. You're somewhere
How are you?
different today.
Yeah, I'm at my parents' house.
Makes
So, because they're at the beach. I'm just hanging out with JR to make sure he doesn't try to throw a party. Yeah. But it's also fun because the pets are here.
Yeah.
So.
That makes sense.
And there's AC, which is nice. How you doing?
Okay. I definitely could have napped today, but did not. But I'm sleepy. I've been a sleepy girl the past couple of days.
I would like
my first batch of kids leaves on this coming Friday. So I'm almost done. And then we get to start over with new children. And hopefully it'll be even better.
How'd your classes go?
They're going well. They're pretty good. There are two girls on my floor who decided yesterday that they can both see ghosts. So
Wow.
don't really know what to do with that.
That's fun.
Yep. They're like 10.
Did they see any at camp?
Oh yeah. It's a big thing. They one of the girls was in one of my classes this past week, and she saw a scary ghost in the building our class was in, which freaked her out for like 2 full days.
Whoa.
And they both say that they have ghosts that followed them to camp that watch them while they're sleeping. And last night, after they discovered that they both see ghosts, they saw a ghost outside the dining hall, which was interesting.
Are you telling the truth?
I mean, who am I to say?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's fine, but if they start scaring our really anxious little ones, I'm going to need them to stop.
Valid.
Yeah.
I wonder if it's all true, though.
I know, right?
Wild.
Yeah.
Did they describe the ghosts in any detail, or did they just say they saw scary ghosts?
They say that the one in the classroom building, because they both had class in there at different times, they say that it was really tall, and I didn't get much more detail than that.
So Slender Man.
Yeah. I keep being like, if you were in Salem, you would both be killed as witches. So.
It's true. You tell them that?
No. They don't need to know.
That'd be a little traumatizing.
Yeah.
They're like, hey, we see ghosts. And you're like, hey, you would die for that.
That's my job. Traumatize the children.
It's a good job.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Where's Max?
Max.
And I have
a friend who reminds me of you.
Really?
Yeah. She's pretty cool.
Yeah?
Yeah.
What's she like?
She just graduated from NYU.
Hello.
Hi, Max.
Hello.
I like your cat.
Yeah, this isn't mine. I don't know where my bedding went, so Lola gave me her old bedding.
Where did it go?
I don't know.
Did you like wash it and use it?
I don't know.
Okay.
I'm feeling kind of sick. There's kind of a cold going around campus. I think it's a cold. I think it's because people aren't wearing masks anymore.
Yeah.
But like everyone's vaccinated, so other things are coming back.
Yeah.
But also I'm gonna get tested tomorrow because I'm a little scared.
That's a good idea anyway.
Because if it were the Delta variant, I would be like, yikes. So that's why I'm in bed.
Nice. Sinclaire was telling me about the children that see ghosts at her summer camp.
I have
Oh, really? Yeah, how's your summer camp?
There are 2 children on my floor that see ghosts. That's-
Interesting.
Yep.
Yeah.
They discovered
So you're saying kids see ghosts?
2 of them do. No one else.
Like the Kanye album?
Hmm?
Kids see ghosts? The Kanye Kid Cudi album?
Oh yeah. I was like, what?
Yeah.
I don't think that's what she's talking about. But yeah.
No, but quite literally.
Yes.
Cool.
Here we are. Podcast.
Kendall, any news? Any gossip before we start?
I went on a Duffy boat yesterday.
A what?
What?
A Duffy boat.
What's
It's
that?
It's like the little ones, and it's a flat boat, and you just like go around the harbor. It's kind of like the Jungle Cruise boats.
Wait, where are you?
I'm at my parents' house right now.
Oh, okay.
But I was at the beach for the weekend
All right.
today.
Luke Stiles called me yesterday,
Oh.
and he was like, "Are you in LA?" And I was like, "No." And
Watch our
he was like,
podcast.
I
Didn't you know?
was like,
But
no.
maybe-
Well, this will be an interesting litmus test. Luke, text me text me. Text me the word pineapple if you listen to this podcast. I actually will do this.
Mm.
He was like, you should come up and hang out with me and Peter before you go back to school. And I was like, I would do that. And it turns out I'm actually going, because they're having like a graduation for Theo's class, just like a ceremony, if like for people that want to still have a ceremony.
Yeah.
So that's happening August 29th. So I'm flying to Berkeley to go to the ceremony. So I guess I'll see Luke. I guess it'll be another time that I hang out with him. You always wonder, when's the last time we're going to hang out? Is this the last?
Yeah.
Are we in a post-Luke era? Yes, but when are we going to stop? So, Sinclaire, you should come up to Dartmouth. Actually, you shouldn't. It sucks here. I should come down. You're so close to me right now. Isn't that kind of crazy?
During the school year, you can come to Maine.
Yeah. Wait, isn't it kind of crazy we're so close to each other right now?
Yeah.
Like, Kendall's across the country. She's the odd one out.
Kendal sucks.
Yeah. Bruh.
We
Need to
have
go out of this campus.
75 downloads.
Whoa.
Holy shit. That's so many.
And
That's
we have 8 episodes?
Do you know how many distinct people we have?
No, it doesn't do it like that.
But that's like,
We have 8 episodes then.
it only was out today, so that's
Day.
more than 10 people an episode.
Yeah, there's about 10 every episode.
That's crazy.
Our most listened
So
to
there's-
is the last one, episode 7, not the one that came out today, but the one from last week.
So theoretically,
It's 13 on the Satan episode. So
Whoa. 13?
yeah,
what's 75 divided by 8?
like 10.
We have at least 9.4 people,
Yeah,
but like consistently watching or listening.
yeah.
That's so many.
Well, actually, we don't really know that because it could be distinct people every time. Maybe we only have one-time listeners.
But that's
Yeah.
75 one-time listeners, Max.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing, honestly.
Also, I got an email from Reason Podcast.
From Gimlet? That's crazy.
That would be cool.
Okay, Gimlet.
We want you guys on. What the fuck? Yes.
I'd die. But they did just get in trouble for a bad work environment, though, so I don't know about that. But fucking
Yeah, we can help them unionize.
yeah, sure. I was gonna say too, Reason Podcast emailed me, which I guess is like a podcasting platform like Spotify or Stitcher or whatever. And they were like, hey, people are listening to you on this. Do you want to claim your podcast? And I was like, yeah. And I'm like, I don't know how it got on here, but like it's on there now. So that's cool.
Podcasting confuses me.
Yeah, me too, honestly. And then I guess we need a bank account for Apple Podcasts so that we can make money from ads.
Do we need like a bank account for the podcast, or can it just be one of ours?
I mean, it could be, but like, I feel like at this point we might just want to one because it wouldn't hurt.
I don't really know how bank accounts work.
I'll ask my mom, but
Sherry,
how? I made an email also. You can email, and then I started to make a business profile on Google, and then it wanted me to post my phone number so everyone could see it. It was like you have to post a phone number or a website, and I was like, I don't want to put my phone number on the internet. So once I have a website
profile website,
you can make a website too, but then it was like not letting me create a website for some reason. It was like, click this to create a website, and it wasn't working. I was also talking to my dad about it. Huh?
We lost him. He's asleep.
I'm so asleep.
He just took a little cat nap.
Bruh, I can't believe I existed today.
Yeah.
I feel that.
I went to improv and I killed it.
Well,
yeah. I'm glad.
Yeah, I'm pretty good.
I was talking to my dad about the podcast a little bit, like last night when I was at the beach, because JR's friend and his family were there. And like I was kind of telling them about it. And then my dad was like, yeah, I watched the one with the like German painting that Sinclaire did. And I was like, that was the first episode.
Yep.
And he was like, oh. It's like, yeah.
People have been like, do you have a podcast? To me, like people I know, like not very well.
That's
are like, this podcast account followed me, and I was like, yeah, that's me.
I started following like just all the suggested people, because I was like, just follow a fuck ton of people. Yeah. So there you go. It has your name in the bio though, so I don't know why they don't think it's you.
No, they're just like, it's funny because it's not like coming from my direction. I'm not like being like, hey, you know what I mean? Like they're finding out through this other thing.
Right.
Am I crashing from caffeine or am I sick? Probably both. I had a yerba and a latte.
That's a lot of caffeine.
I'm just dying.
I had Popeye. I'm gonna take a nap.
You had Popeyes? That's lit. I love Popeyes. That one on Lake is so fun.
Mm-hmm.
Sinclaire, do you have like an identity crisis about like not being where you grew up?
I don't have a place.
Because that would fuck with me.
Yeah. I nowhere feels like home, and I keep being like, well, I grew up in Los Angeles, but now my family's in Mass, and I go to school in Maine, so I'm kind of all over the place, and it's just all sorts of crazy.
That sucks.
That's okay.
That would make me very sad.
What are you thinking about after Bedoin?
That's a great question. I could see myself being in Boston or somewhere else.
All right. Well, that's good that you're in a place where you can see yourself living at least.
I don't see myself moving back to LA for any extended period of time.
Okay.
I never really did. So I think that is good at least.
All right.
Should we start? That was 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Also, I do have to be at a meeting by 9.
Okay.
I don't know how that affects things. I honestly might just leave early. I don't know.
I want to be spast. I want to be spast. I want to be speedy anyway. So.
Speedy and fast.
All right, let's do it. To Wheaton today, so let's do it.
Let's be spast.
Let's be spast. I'm going to share my screen.
Our last episode was literally my lucky number. I somehow edited it to 47 minutes and 47 seconds.
Wow.
Damn, that's crazy.
And then it uploaded perfectly the first time. And I was like, magic, bro.
Wow.
It made me so happy.
So today I have some ancient stuff for you, but mostly I want to talk about like repatriation and shit because that stuff I really love.
This is great.
Yep. We're going to start by talking about the Parthenon because I want to talk about the Elgin marbles, which are a group of marble sculptures that were taken from the Parthenon and are now in England. So this is the Parthenon. It's a building from ancient Greece. It's this like huge rectangular temple to Athena. This is it in its like modern state of disrepair, but it was once a really nice, well put together Greek building. The architects were Iptinos and Callicrates, and the sculptor, or like the guy who sort of headed up the sculpting design and his like people sculpted it, was Phidias. It was constructed during the 5th century BCE and finished in 432. So this is like, it's a temple to Athena. It was, and it's in Athens, Greece, if you don't know that. It was built by the ancient Greeks to thank Athena for their military victory over the Persian Empire in the early 5th century, I guess. They, like the Greeks and the Persians, like fought a lot during this time period. There was a lot of that. So this was sort of like commemorating a military victory. And it was a temple to Athena, the patron goddess of the city of Athens, to thank her for that victory. And this building was covered in sculpture, basically. The whole, like this top part was all frieze, which means like sculpture or paint that's like in a band on a wall. This is all sculpted frieze. So there are like shallow sculptures all along this part. And then also in the pediments, which are these triangle bits at the top on both sides, there were much like deeper, more dramatic, like big sculptures up in the pediments. So the friezes are like shallow sculpture. I'll show you some pictures in a sec. And then the pediments are like big, sort of like all the way around sculpture. And I think there was sculpture all along the inside too on this top part here. So yeah, here are some pictures. So this is part of one of the pediments. So this would be like in the corner of the triangle. So you can see sort of like the sculptures taking that form of the side of a triangle. And these are like gods and goddesses, I think. The ancient Greeks were big into like naturalistic proportions and showing off the human body and obviously like showing off their texture and fabric carving skills. Even though all of this is in marble, they achieved some pretty cool like drapery effects with their fabrics. Also like some pretty cool muscular folks. So all about like showing off the beauty of the human body.
What happened to their heads?
I think that because necks are a fragile zone, like necks and wrists tend to break over time. I don't think that someone like came through and decapitated them. I think they probably just broke off over time.
I think it is kind of funny how like that's such a recognized thing of not only like the Greek sculpture, but the Greek sculpture missing limbs. Like that's for some reason like that itself is kind of like an art norm. I don't know.
Yeah, totally. There are some that are like just a torso. It's just
Right.
like draped fabric on a torso, and that's what we have.
It's funny. It's like kind of taken on a different like meaning just
Yeah.
because of the way that like all these sculptures decay. I don't know.
Buddha torso. I went to the Norton Simon, which is the first museum I've been to since COVID.
Mhm.
Damn.
And there was a little Buddha torso. And I was like, this is interesting because it was very plain. It was just like torso with clothes.
Mhm.
And I was like, how'd you know that was a Buddha? That was my question. But
It's a good question. This is like the other side of a pediment fabric. We got no heads. These are some goddesses. And then this is like part of one of the friezes. So this is a much like shallower sculpture, but you still have like a lot of attention paid to like the muscle and the movement of the horse's legs and their clothes still. So that's pretty cool.
These are also kind of like dioramas. I don't know.
yeah.
Sort of bring it back to the gold border.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is also a really interesting thing because it's like it's kind of out, but it's still like kind of a 2D medium. I don't know.
Yeah.
Kind of a comic in that way too.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I think these friezes, like when all put together, are sort of like a big procession, and they sort of like they all go together in the way that a comic kind of does. I'm not sure if these ones are like in order chronologically or if they're one big scene, but I know a lot of things that are from this time are like the column of Hadrian is like a comic, like it's a narrative in order, told in one big ribbon of sculpture. Yeah. So these are like some examples of sculpture that exist. These are all currently in museums. I think these are all currently in the British Museum, which we will talk about in a minute. So there's like tons of marble sculpture that was on this building, created for this building. They all depict like warriors and gods and, I don't know, other people associated with this military victory and associated with like commemorating this temple. And this would have been, this structure still is at the Acropolis in Athens, which is like sort of the tall, high up city center kind of place, and was like a sacred place in the mythology. I think the Acropolis is supposed to have been like where Athena and Poseidon had their little battle for who got to like be the patron of Athens. And Poseidon like created a little spring, and Athena created an olive tree, and the people of Athens decided the olive tree was more useful. So Athena became the patron saint of Athens. And I think this is supposedly like where that story took place.
Maybe they just thought that if they chose Poseidon, the name, like, what would they name it? Like, besides, it would be weird.
It would be so weird.
You know, Athena, Athens, like, that lends itself pretty well, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. So today you can find the Elgin marbles, which is a group of many, many marbles taken from this building in the British Museum in London.
Classic.
Talk a little bit about
Bruh moment. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so like this structure is still in Athens, but a lot of the decorative parts of it are in England.
I'm sorry.
This is like a hot topic in the art history world. They're very debated. So what happened was, like in the early 19th century, so like between 1801 and 1812, this dude named Thomas Bruce, who was the 7th Earl of Elgin, came over to what is now Greece, what was then a part of the Ottoman Empire, as an ambassador from England. And he took his like band of dudes over with him to this spot. And he got permission from the leaders of the Ottoman Empire, supposedly, this is also disputed, to like observe and sketch and like measure and then maybe take some things from the like Greek antiquities. It's unclear in the language what the real terms of that agreement were, but there was some sort of legal permission given to do something with these antiquities. And what he decided to do was take a bunch of marbles, mostly from the Parthenon, but also from other places, and take them back to Europe with him. Just take them to England. Like, so he got out of there with like tons of marble from this building and brought it back to England. And I think it was like his for a while. And then Lord Byron was like really, really angry with him and called him like a vandal and a looter. And it was kind of fun. And then eventually, pretty soon after, it was decided that these, like someone in the British government sort of bought them off of him and put them in the British Museum. So they've been in the British Museum since like the mid 19th century, I think. Meanwhile, Greece won independence from the Ottoman Empire in 1832 and immediately sort of started some campaigns to get objects back, cultural heritage objects that were elsewhere, including these Elgin marbles, which get their name from the Earl of Elgin who took them. And this debate has basically continued like from the mid 19th century until now. They are still in the British Museum. Greece has recently built, I think it opened in like 2008 or 2009, new Acropolis Museum that is like next to this site. It's a very beautiful museum. I have a picture that it's like all glass and it overlooks the Acropolis. And they have a bunch of marbles from the Parthenon and from this site, from excavating at this site. And they have like all of the Parthenon friezes that they have lined up with spots for the ones that are in England. And they built this museum essentially to house the objects that were stolen from them in an attempt to get them back. And
That's so crazy.
yeah.
Like
And
there's literally, the museum is there. Like there's no argument.
Mm-hmm. And they have like, I think plaster casts of the ones that are missing that I think maybe even have like veils over them. Like it's very clear like what is missing from the big line of friezes that were in order. Yes. So there's still like a ton of debate over where they should be. Some of the arguments for keeping them where they are in the British Museum are sort of a general one that is often touted when people are afraid of repatriating objects, which is
I think I know where it's
back. Our museums would be empty. There would be nothing there for people to see, and no
classic.
One would happen.
Which is not how that works at all.
If we give back the
really not how it works.
There's so
we wouldn't
much
have
art
anything.
and stuff in the world. Like, make a new fucking exhibit. Figure it out, bro.
If we
like,
gave back, well, I guess. Bro, never mind. I don't even have anything to
museums
say.
have so much stuff that's not on display also, and like a lot of that stuff they loan to other museums, and it's easy for museums to loan stuff to each other. Like that's just not an argument to me.
Another argument that I've read about is like one about access for tourists and visitors, which is that like the British Museum gets like, I don't know, something like 10 times the amount of visitors in a year that like this museum would in Greece, does in Greece. And so sort of like more people will see stuff, more people will learn about stuff, more people will have access to stuff if it's in more of like a metropolitan center that people visit. There's also a fear of damage to the marbles if they go back to Athens, because apparently the air quality is bad, which I don't know how legitimate that is, but is something that people talk about a lot. And then something else that's kind of interesting to think about on a larger scale is like, do the people of modern Greece really have more of a connection or more of a claim to like ancient Greek culture than any other democratic nation or any other like society that draws such influences from ancient Greece?
Well, I feel like with this case, like I can maybe see that argument for other places. But like, I think like in a place where like the ruins are such a big part of it, I don't know. Like, also something else interesting that I want to talk about is just like the concept of like ruins in general, because I think it's like really interesting. Like, not just like old things, but like that are preserved, but like little ruins that are just what they are, and it's just like the decay of them is so interesting, because it's like another aspect of like beauty that is like due to the decay itself, and it like takes on a new character with that decay.
I think preserving decay is also a really interesting idea.
Right.
No, it's interesting though. I mean, I think there's a lot of, I don't know, and how much we look up to those iconic, like the Parthenon, you know, like I don't when I picture it, like if I hadn't seen the picture you put up, my mind would have gone to ruins, not like the preserved version.
But especially like in a place, getting back to the British Museum thing, where like the ruins are such a big like part of like, I feel like the metaphysical like mindset of the space, like it just makes sense thematically for the rest of the things from those ruins to be in that space, even if like just regarding the people involved, you know, there's like some identity problem stuff, like whatever, like how much do these people have ownership rather than others, but just like the fact that like this is where it was, these pieces should also be where it was.
But also the place where it is still has these ruins.
Exactly.
And lots of other marble statues and sculptures. So it's like, do they need more? I don't know. And also, like, you were like, well, should they go back to Greek people because they have the connection? And I'm like, well, there are Greek people all over the world.
Right.
I'm sure there's plenty of Greek people in England that can go to the British Museum, you know, so.
Well, it's also like how much, obviously, like they were influenced, but it's like, you know, those people like weren't part of like ancient Greece. Like they're just different people.
Yeah.
You know, like it's not like, oh, that was my dad's Parthenon. Like it's kind of, it's not really.
Now I think maybe
it's not really.
Yeah.
I wonder. We need like a Greek viewer or listener to tell us, do they feel a connection to Greek sculpture?
Yeah. Well, it's also, is it like, and if they do, like, is that justified? Like, maybe this is kind of an absurd connection to make, but it's like, I feel like in the US, like white people are kind of like taught to like identify with the Revolutionary War and be like, oh, those are our founding fathers. But it's like, they wouldn't have given a shit about like any of us. It doesn't even matter if you're white. Like,
They weren't thinking about.
like they don't care.
No. I'll bring in the colonization part.
Yeah.
In my section, but yeah.
There's just a few themes to explore.
Yeah.
There's a couple little things.
An interesting example for me because a lot of repatriation is like easier to wrap my mind around if it's like a settler group taking from a colonized group. Like that power dynamic is a lot clearer to me in my head of like, just give it back. Yeah. And this feels like a little bit fuzzier, and so it's a little bit easier to think about both sides. I still am in the camp of like, just give it back, but things of like access and like people can learn from it and see it in more spaces is also sometimes compelling. I
think it's like a matter of weighing different things, because it's like when on the other side it's like taking from a culture that's like very closely tied to the existing culture, and it's like directly harmed them by taking it in the first place, and like harming the people that exist as a result. It's like, well, like this kind of access thing, like it's kind of smaller.
Is the cultural awareness argument is the only compelling one to me, because it's like, I agree. Like, how are you going to learn about other cultures if you can never leave your own state, kind of thing? Always.
Right.
Yeah.
About that.
I'm very interested in seeing how museums start to use like video and photograph and holograph and like casts of things, because I kind of feel like if you can make a reasonably good quality like plaster cast of a marble, I don't see why that couldn't like replace these in the British Museum and be the thing that people look at. Like, why does it have to be the object itself to have value? And I don't know, in this case especially, like I'm really compelled by like putting them all back together and putting them in the place they originated and putting them in a space where like see where they started, like right across over on this hill,
and what originally in context.
Well, it probably is like, ideally you could have something like the British Museum where the people who should own the things, but just like, oh, the British Museum can take it for a few months, and then like, so that like they still have ownership, which is like the bottom line, like most important, but like things can kind of shuffle around so that different people can see things. But that has to be from their own agency. Of course.
Which is kind of the model in New Zealand at some museums that work really closely with Maori peoples. Like they have a much more communal collaborative relationship, at least to my understanding, where like in one museum in particular, like Maori people own the objects that are seen as like beings on their own, that they control like when things are photographed and what's written about things, and like if something can be loaned out or not, and they will travel with the object if it's being loaned out, and like if they need it for a ceremony they can always take it back, and like that sort of like ceding of power on the museum's behalf has been really like, I think really beneficial for that relationship. But I think is something that's really hard for museums to like wrap their minds around, not being in full control of the objects in their collections. It's just a very different model.
But I think that is a great model.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to do things, though. And it makes a lot of sense. And to me, I mean, I think with the piece I'm talking about too, like, it just makes so much sense to me to be like, here, like, you control ownership of it. And I'm sure a lot of the people would choose to also loan it out and continue to let people see it.
And you can control how your own story is told, and you can make sure that your
which is so
important
important
and understood in the way that you want it to be.
Yeah.
That was interesting.
You got any more for us, Sinclaire?
No, that's all I have for you.
All right. Okay, I'm going to try to go fast. All right, I'm talking about the Ndop figures.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, which I briefly mentioned when Sinclaire was talking about Micheline Thomas. And so I was like, that would be fun to explore further. Plus, it's an AP work. So if we're going for this as a study guide for people, here you go. We did 2 AP works today.
If you're using this as a study guide, please get help.
Yeah.
Please.
They're better.
Please. I mean, listen to that end of the episode. But like,
this probably, I mean, this is the way we studied and we did fine. So you'll probably do okay.
Keep listening, but also you might be a little misguided.
Yeah, just use Khan Academy also and you'll be fine. So these are the Ndop figures. This is the one I'm focusing on. I was going to look up how to pronounce all these things and then I forgot, so I apologize in advance. But this one is a portrait of a king. There's lots of different names here, but the one I've found most commonly that they think this king is Mishe Mishiang Bul, something like that, from the Kuba Peoples. So all of these are from the Kuba Peoples, which come from the current Democratic Republic of Congo, though they were made before when it was just the Congo, and then it became the Belgian Congo, which is when these were taken away from the people that created them. King Mishe, which is what I'm just going to call him, is the king that this probably is representing, and things that we've heard about him are he's very generous. He had lots of loyal subjects. He even had his own praise song, and he commissioned this Ndop figure. These are all called Ndop figures, by the way. That's the name for these wood sculptures.
Wait, they're wood?
Yeah, they're made of wood, but they're polished
like bronze.
Yeah, they're polished with, I gotta find out what oil it is. I meant to look that up, and I fully did not.
I don't know why this is funny, you typing this.
For you.
Palm oil. That's what I was gonna say anyway.
Yeah. Oh yeah, really?
Yeah. Yeah, they talk about his aloofness and composure. All of them have very like gentle expressions and very non-violent. Like the handle of the knife is facing in, not out, which means it's non-violent. And they're made of wood, specifically Crossopteryx febrifuga. So that's the kind of wood, also known as tucula. I'm probably saying this all so poorly, but it's fine. They were made in Mushenge. I'm saying this so bad. I feel awful about this. Kasai province in the Democratic Republic of Congo between 1760 and 1780. And this one is 19 by 7 by 8 inches. So it's like almost 2 feet. It's not currently on view, which also I think is interesting because it's in the Brooklyn Museum, but it is not.
Is it closed right now?
No, I think the museum's open. This is just not on display.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay. So just generally, here's some other Ndop figures. So you can tell they all like are very similar stylistically. And they talk about how they're like a little bit stylized, even going into the realm of abstraction. They all are 1/3 proportions. That's the way everything is measured out. And the head is always 1/3 the size of the entire body. And they all have these little hats or headdresses, which are called shoddies. And they have like cowrie shells around them. Like this one you can see has cowrie shells right here. And what else? Yeah, they're very polished. Oh, one of them holds a rooster, which is a symbol of vigilance. And then they each have a little symbol called an ebol, which represents which king they are, because, or inyum is the word for king. I hope I'm saying that okay. So none of these are actually like portraits per se, like they're more representations of the king or the reign, but it's not like supposed to resemble them. It's just supposed to resemble like or represent like the kingly role and all that comes with that. And the ebol is chosen by the king when he's installed as the leader. Some also say maybe all of this happens after the king dies, they make these. So there's some conjecture about that. I got a lot of notes. Okay, this was purchased by the Brooklyn Museum. It was collected, quote unquote, by a colonial minister in the Belgian Congo, which was Belgium's colony. They talk about, that's like all that's said, which I was like, also there's never information about how it was actually taken. It's always like, oh, this was just acquired, and you just have to wonder what that looked like.
Follow the property records.
Yeah. But these are like sacred objects. I found stuff that talked about how they were often like kept in the chambers with the wives of the king when the king wasn't there. Like they would take on this Ndop figure as a representation of the king, and they would like care for it in the same way they would for the king if that were him. Like it's a representation of his soul and his essence in a very like literal sense. And also it's said to provide fertility. And at the death, the figure would be brought to the king in order to like absorb his energy. Then the next king would take the Ndop and would sleep with the old Ndop figure of the last king in order to absorb his energy. So there's a lot of like energy exchanges and stuff going on. Yeah, these are the most revered type of art by Kuba artists. The Kuba people, I will tell you who they are. Yeah, the Kuba are people who still live, which is why I'm like, these should go back to them because they still live there and exist as a living society. The Kuba still live in the Democratic Republic of Congo on the southern fringes of the equatorial forest in an area bounded by two rivers called the Kasai and Sonkuru. Kuba refers to 9 ethnic groups who all acknowledge the same leader or king. Yeah, and these artists would use lots of different kind of media, but these are the most famous. There were blacksmiths, wood carvers, and weavers, and most of the artists worked exclusively for the kings. And in the same way that like Western art workshops worked, they would copy the art of their teachers to learn, which they remarked on as if like that's super cool that it's similar to Western art, but whatever. The names of the kings were not written down, but the artists, the names of these artists weren't written down, but they were in high demand, like by name. So people knew who these artists were and would request them to do their different commissions. It's now housed in the British Museum and in various Ndop figures. There's about 7 that they consider important because they have colonial accounts of which reigns they're associated with. So again, importance is based on the colonial perspective. Those are in the British Museum also, and the Royal Museum for Central Africa in Belgium. Yeah, and they weren't like modeled. They're not modeled by the kings either. So the king wouldn't even like sit for a portrait to be made. It did not work like that. Oh yeah, and also would serve as contact points with his spirit. And this is a culture though of oral narrative, which is why they talk about, oh, we have no information. We don't know who the king actually is and stuff. A lot of the times you can guess based on the symbol.
Don't follow the property records.
Yeah.
There is none.
There are none. Okay, you've got lots of, like, stylistically now. You have lots of rounded contours. No, I thought I had more pictures. Whatever. there's like defined collarbones.
Wait, sorry. Before you move on to style, can I ask 2 questions?
Sure.
I don't know if you already covered this already, but my first question is, do you know like how, are there any like tools that are used to make these? Like,
I didn't find
like,
anything about that.
are they like
I can
whittled?
tell you this week. Are they
Or
what?
what I would like, are they what I would maybe think of as whittling? Like,
Yeah, I think so.
okay.
That's what I'd imagine.
Okay. And then my other question is there like, I'm seeing these, but like in isolation. Is there like a specific way that these would be displayed? Obviously, you said they like people keep them on them, but
yeah, I think
like,
that's the way it was. But
okay.
it said they were used as historical markers too when they would tell stories. So I don't think they were like on display in any way. It seems like they were used in day-to-day ritual.
Okay.
That's my guess, but I don't know. So yeah, lots of symbolic conventions. As you can tell, they all look very similar. And the facial features follow all these sculpting conventions. There's also a geometric motif that's chosen when at the coronation of the king. So he chooses like this bottom pattern here on the platform, which is called I wrote this one down. It's called a yeet, which is spelled like I and then yeet, Y-E-E-T, which I thought was kind of funny. So they are sitting on these little platforms and they have these geometric motifs on them in prominent relief, it says. And the drum and the severed hand is the eagle of the king I was telling you about, which is right here. I don't know why that is, and it did not tell me either. The ikul is the ceremonial knife that he's holding. Oh, they never have any deformities or distinguishing marks, and they always face forward. They're very like solid looking because they're like stable, square. Yeah. And sometimes they have scarification or keloids. I didn't look that up, so I'll tell you next week what that is. They have these calm expressions. They have closed almond-shaped eyes, which we saw in lots of like African masks also, I remember. Which do you remember what that represented?
Well, to me, these eyes always look like cowrie shells. Like his eyes really look like cowrie shells to me, which I know is like a status symbol, like a money sort of symbol. Mm-hmm. That's what I would assume, but I'm not sure.
That's definitely part of the association. They have these full relaxed lips and they're cross-legged on the platform. Oh, sorry, the platform is the ying, and then the little cloth plaque that covers his butt is called the yeet, which we can't see, and I didn't find any like backwards views of him, so you don't get to see his butt, sorry. They usually have their right hand on one leg, and then as we saw with this other one, sometimes they'll hold a rooster, which is a symbol of vigilance, which I really wondered how that became associated with vigilance, but things happen. Yeah, I think
roosters look over. I don't know.
The coop. Yeah.
Well,
they're vigilant in the morning, but tell you it's morning.
They're always out and about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think of any animal as particularly vigilant or not, but yeah. So
name one vigilant animal right now.
The meerkat.
Name one, please, Kendal. Force yourself.
A cat is vigilant. Yeah, meerkat. Oh, that's a good one.
I would say Otto.
I don't know if I agree with that one.
Are you kidding me? He's so observant.
No, yeah.
He's always on the lookout.
Uh-huh.
My cats are pretty vigilant. The birds that eat at our bird feeders. They'll just sit there and jump at the birds.
But yeah, in terms of the repatriation argument and stuff, I think these should definitely be placed back under the control of the Kuba. I think it just is very silly considering they're still
this is a pretty non-controversial.
Yeah, this one, there's not a lot of other arguments. I mean, for me, the only one, again, that holds water is the well, like people in Brooklyn or the British Museum or the Belgian Museum can learn about these idioms. I don't know. I still think, like Sinclaire said, like you could do the same thing with images or holographs or projections. Like there are tons of other ways to show that without having the actual object, especially considering how sacred they are and how like instrumental they are for storytelling and like the history.
Yeah, it's pretty not a good thing.
Yeah.
Colonizers. Anyway, I wanted to do something like non-Western, but
No, this was really cool.
About the West and colonization anyway.
You know what's really cool about this? I learned about this through pictures.
Wow.
Yeah, you
That's
did.
crazy. I didn't even see it in person.
Yeah.
That's wild.
And you were able
And
to.
it's thanks to Kendal.
You're welcome.
Go work, Kendal.
But yeah, that was one of my favorite AP works, though. I think they're really cool. Like cool and beautiful stylistic depiction of people. And they look like little action figures almost, you know? Like collect them all. But also don't give them back.
Yeah. No, I really like them. It's kind of like, it's really impressive how polished that wood is. Oh my God.
Well,
Like,
that's
that is
the
it's just like, as an object, it's beautiful. Like,
yeah. Well, and it's supposed to show how like healthy and alive they are too.
yeah.
Because it makes them look more living.
That was a really great content podcast, I felt like.
I enjoy.
I also, it was kind of cool we had like the through line thematically of
We keep doing that too.
like art. Where does art go?
Yeah.
How do we get art?
With each other, you guys.
Class in the fall that was called Who Owns the Past, and that was basically what we talked about the whole class, and it was rad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the Greek one is a really interesting case. I think just so much to explore.
Like Greek and British leaders have been fighting about for like centuries. Like it is still being debated where they should be.
Yeah. And it's interesting like how many arguments there are. Like there's so many, you know, it's not like this versus this, and it's like we think this is more important. We think there's just, I mean, that too, but like there's just so many different avenues.
Yeah. That one's definitely not black and white. But
yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. Makes me think a lot too, because as a philosophy major, where you're studying like a lot of, I think like this is somewhat related, but like I think like classics. I'm not the first to say this. I don't know where I read this, but I think like classics as classics more than philosophy, but also philosophy. Like classics as an area of study is kind of predicated on like white people like identifying with a lot of ancient things that like aren't what we think of as white at all.
Yeah.
/ are very different culturally / like would not have cared about us.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It makes you think when you're reading Socrates and you're like, no, this is not like an old like white professor at Dartmouth. Like this is Socrates.
Yeah. I went to a really good talk. I think like when I was a prospective student at Bowdoin, that was someone who was basically like pushing to bring color back into exhibits that showcase things from the ancient world, because a lot of things were painted, and because we think of them as like white marbles, we think of everyone from the ancient world as white, when in reality, like Rome was like a diverse metropolis, and most people were Middle Eastern in like complexion, and like it was just like so much more of a diverse, like colorful world than we think it was, because everything we see from that time is white, which is like a really interesting, like she was pushing to do a lot more with projection and like create models of sculptures that are painted like they would have been. Sort of get that back in the public imagination.
Yeah. Well, like
do that one this week. The AP work painted like that.
I think there's a lot of interesting art like about what Jesus looks like. Because like modern America, I think, teaches us like subconsciously to think Jesus is like a white guy.
Oh yeah.
Because we're like claiming that as like our heritage, kind of.
For sure.
As like our like white heritage. I don't know, it's just interesting like how easily you can like manipulate. And it's like, even though I know that subconsciously, it's like that's been drilled in my head for like 20 years.
Well, I was watching something with JR. It was like a YouTube video about David Dobrik as a cult leader. And like, but the girl was really smart that was doing it. And she was saying that like one of the tactics is to like change the frame of reference.
Right.
And so like, I think that's, and religion is a cult. So let's isolate the Christians more. But also, I wanted to tell you too, when I signed up for the Reasons podcast, I had to choose 5 categories to put our podcast in. So I did like
art, say religion,
education, and entertainment, and then I did Christianity and religion.
That's funny.
Because I was like, I just want Christians to find it just to see what happens.
We're gonna get targeted.
Yeah, I hope so. Let's find out. I remember like the National Geographic cover when like Jesus was shown, like it was like a 3D image model of how he would probably actually look based on like bone DNA and stuff. And he was a Middle Eastern dude, like, you know, and so, and that was like caused so much controversy too. And it's the whole like Black Santa thing too. It's like at this point, this guy isn't even real. Like he's a construct, so it should not matter at all what his race is. But
well, I remember
to white people.
I remember when I was in Cusco. Now, obviously, this is kind of stupid because it's like about me as a white guy being like, "Oh, like not all like my perspective is like, you know, like it doesn't matter." Like me coming to realize that, like that's not really the story that matters. But I was like 14, and there was like a church. And they had, they had a Jesus that looked like kind of like an Incan Jesus with Incan roots. And I was like, huh. And now obviously I'm like, well, it's like we're both just doing like white people and them are both doing the co-opting. Theirs is probably more accurate. I mean, Jesus wasn't Incan, but I mean, I'm pretty sure, but it's just interesting to like step out and be like, oh, like everyone's just like co-opting it.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing about religious figures too, is it's like so much of it is about like identifying with them,
right? And
a lot of that happens visually, like even at the Norton Simon, like, which I think I'm going to talk about the Norton Simon next week because I thought about it for this week and I was like, I want more time to like research it and stuff. Their entire Asian art section, and it's like I think Southeast and East Asian art is all in the basement, which is very telling. And it's actually, I really like their display of it because of one room where there's like they do
have a really good display. I mean, the basement thing is fucked, but they do have a really good display.
But the display is very beautiful, and like there's a little area where you can sit, and there's like a statue of the Buddha like directly across from you, and you're looking inside, and it's beautiful. But you're like eye to eye with him, and it's really cool. But even looking at that, like there's so many different depictions of the Buddha and like of these Hindu gods that are actually very distinct in their images with like blue elephants and stuff. But even then, there's like a multitude of different ways that they're shown. So I don't know. I think it just goes to show like people make their religious figures look how they want them to look. and fit within their worldview, you know, for better or for worse.
All right. Well, on that note, I have to leave. I think that was a really good podcast.
Yeah, I'm excited to edit this.
All right.
Cool.
Good to see you guys.
Yeah. Find us on Instagram at paintoncanvasontape with underscores in between all the words. Our new email is paintoncanvasontape, all one word, all
amazing.
at gmail.com.
Did that.
And because it was also just too long if I put anything in it, and I didn't want people to keep having to type it. So I was like, it's one word. We're on Reason Podcast now, and you can find us on basically every other podcast streaming site. Rate and review on iTunes. That would be awesome.
All right. Bye, guys.
Okay, bye. Thanks for listening.